Hey guys, welcome to day four's recording of the fourth day of our 5-day event that centered around the hummingbird and the element of air. The subjects of today, or of the fourth day, were to be real love, romantic relationships, community, communication, and ultimately the power of our thoughts and our words. We had some technical difficulties on the actual day of the event, but we realized that this was such a powerful subject that Mari and I decided to do a little meeting and go ahead and make sure that we had a replay for you guys. Our original meeting was almost or just over 2 hours. We had Eddie and Yolanda with us, and it was a wonderful event. It was a wonderful conversation. So we're not gonna try to replicate it, but we have to we have things to say and we have messages to deliver. And Mari will step in and join me as soon as she's ready. So the subject of real love it's almost cliche. There are so many songs about it. It's certainly the intention of everyone who is looking for a life partner. They want authentic, they want true, and this real idea is always at the forefront of the quality of the love we're looking for. And I would say that it's so important that we do kind of redefine some of these words, especially real, because we have so much level confusion when we're throwing these words around, like what do we mean by real? Because if something is real, it really shouldn't change in its realness. It should be the way that it is always, and it shouldn't change. So the premise of love between humans, whether it's familial love, whether it's between parents and children, or whether it's romantic relationships, and even friendship, even that kind of love, it really is very transactional. It is very conditional. It is based on conditions being met. And one of those main conditions is bodily proximity or interaction via the body. And that might be, you know, text communication, talking on the phone, face-to-face meeting, physical events that are done together, meals being shared, what have you. So the number one condition of the traditional human love premise is that bodies have to be around to do it. And, it's no secret that bodies do not stay around forever. They don't stick around forever. They're not permanent fixtures. Definitely not in this world, and certainly, if there was some colonization of Mars, they wouldn't be sticking around anywhere else as we know them. So we have to kind of adjust our perspective of this idea and this premise of love, and to also understand that in order to keep something as authentic as possible, simplicity is key. So when we say that there are different types of love, that I love my children one way, but I love my husband another, I love my friend one way, but I love my parents another. This only serves to complicate. So today we're going to present the perspective that real love is changeless. It does not require forms, like whether we're talking about, expressions of love, like gift giving or time spent or, words of affirmation. We're not, these are currencies in a way. When we think about the love languages, if you're familiar with the five love languages, that book of, the way people express love, we're not talking about that. We want a term and content and meaning that is unified, that can be generalized, and that really serves to meet that transcendent experience that we all deserve, want, are looking for, and mistakenly expecting to find outside of us. So love, where real love is concerned, love, to me, involves a certain energetic aspect. We're talking about feeling like you are tended to, both in a nurturing, inclusive, being held manner, being paid attention to, meaning not monitored, but really held in the mind of something. Anytime someone says, "You've been on my mind," or "You're always on my mind," or "There isn't a moment that passes that I don't think about you," that feels good to us. The idea that someone is holding space for us in their mind, in positive regard, of course, is very comforting to us. And then, so that idea of being held and not being released, being held in someone's mind always, right? Clearly, humans can't keep they can't keep up their end of the bargain where that's concerned, because you might be in the back of someone's mind while they are doing something very, like dangerous. Maybe they're operating heavy machinery. Maybe they're a military service member and they're off defending our freedom, whatever. You can only think about one thing at a time. As having this human being type experience, you really have to accept the limitation of what you can think about at any given time. And so, what do we do when we have other things vying for our attention? Do we feel less significant, less valid, less important, in the perspective of our partners? Children, when their parents have to go out and work, when their parents want to interact with each other and they don't want the children around, do the children feel less important, not important enough, not significant enough, unloved? So these are the limitations of the conventional idea of love. And that's why when we move to something that is real, from the perspective of the teachings in A Course in Miracles, nothing real can be threatened. Nothing real can be threatened. So when we are talking about real love, we're making this assumption that it is transcendent of all time and space. And the only way to do that is to look at it from a mind perspective, from this etheric, non-physical perspective. Okay? Even when someone passes on, no, you can't perceive them with your five senses. But the moment you think about them, you are calling their essence into your experience. And your bond, your connection to them, it can't be severed. It can't. So because by virtue of this non-physical idea of the mind, which science has admitted is not contained in your brain. Your mind is not in your brain. Okay? The transcendence of the body's necessity in this involvement is very clear. So real love is that which has no limitation. That means that you can break up with someone, you could cease to have physical interactions with someone, but you can hold them in an unconditional positive regard. You can acknowledge that within them is a non-earthly divine center and core that is just like yours, that is yours. It's no different than yours. And you can acknowledge that you have access to the memory and the essence of that person without ever saying another word to them, without them ever being in your physical presence. Okay. And so as we look to this idea of real love, we have to be willing to entertain that it is not of the body. Real love is not of the body. It can be expressed and reflected bodily, but that is not where it is. And using any kind of physical interaction or actions and attempting to sanctify or legitimize and authenticate the love, you're going to miss the mark. One of the biggest things that we really want to do less of is using sex as the measure of love, right? Sex does not sanctify a relationship. Sex does not authenticate the love relationship at all. Of course, this is a perspective, but I can, on your last exhale, you will remember that sex has nothing to do with love. So, romantic relationships, that leads us into the subject of romantic relationships and how often we go to romantic relationships. We seek out people to be involved with us in a romantic relationship. And what is it that we're looking for when we go to that relationship? Well, we have a whole laundry list, a grocery list of things we're looking for as a result of interacting and being part of that relationship. And that's where the first red flag is. When and if you are going to a relationship to expect, to take, to feel complete, to feel useful, to feel valid, you are treading on ground that is liable to make that relationship a dependent, addictive encounter. Your alternative is to remember the wholeness that energetically you are, the love that you were created as, because I do equate love with energy. I do equate energy with God. I do equate love with God. I equate love with light. And so we have a bunch of different terms, semantics, that really could be used interchangeably. Love, light, God, energy, life, all of these things at a maximally imaginable intensity and longevity. This is what we're all looking for. You're not going to find these things in a body. You're not going to find them in your own body. You're certainly not going to find them through an intermediary, through someone else's body. And so when you recognize that you are all of those things already, you are the light, you are energy, you are a vortex of energy. The human biofield, this, if it was photographable, is this torus, this donut-like, the hole in the middle, donut-like shaped thing that in-streams energy from above, down its center channel, and out. Okay, you're emitting that. I think there's something else projecting that. That something else is who you really, really are. But from this energetic level, that field of energy is all it is. It is love, it is energy, it is life, it is light, and it is an extension of God. It is a creation of that one that is all that is. If you can recognize that you are all that already, you would not be searching for it. You would be open to opportunities to extend yourself, to extend love. You wouldn't be asking for it. You would be showing up, accepting your role in these beautiful encounters that have the opportunity to be very enriching, very expansive, very joyous. Sometimes they're only a couple of minutes. I love, there's an example of a child, running down the hall, not looking and bumping into your legs, and how do you react in that moment? Are you angry? Do you scold them, or do you laugh and do you say, be safe, look forward when you're running, you know? And then when the child moves off, goes off, do you start, devaluing the parent who let the child run amok, who let them run rampant? And if you should find yourself at an impasse where it seems that there is no more collaboration, there really is just like these two heads butting, these two differing opinions, nobody's giving, nobody's softening, it is okay. It is 100% okay to detach from that physicalness of the relationship with the understanding that you cannot disconnect yourself from that person on the realist, most true and authentic essence of being, because you are both part of one infinite mind. The Buddhists have a saying, we are many in body, one in mind. And that idea of the one field of all the energy that exists, that is ever expanding. A single biofield cannot be ostracized and segregated and separated from that one field. And so the egoic mind, the false self, the persona that vies for your attention and believes that it is who you are, or tries to convince you as a decision-making mind that is who you are, it will try to convince you that strings need to be tied and severed, that energetic cords must be, disintegrated. You can't do that. That's not possible. But what you can do is, in this arena, in this realm of performance, of illusion, of mass hallucination, you can make a decision to put your attention on something else. Preferably, especially in a situation like that, you would put your attention back on the center, on that inner being, that who you are, who, when you do focus on, calms you, holds that space for you, helps you feel more at peace, more at ease. You would center, you would get into alignment with that idea of completeness, of peace, and of wholeness. And then you would shift your attention onto whatever new subject it was. And it may not be on another relationship, especially if we're talking about adult children's diverging physical paths from their parents. It happens a lot. I like to offer a space, head-wise, mind-wise, where an adult child can lovingly detach from maladaptive ways of relating to their adult, to their parents, and not feel guilty or ashamed, or feel like they're rejecting or abandoning their parents. And so what is all of, what's the next foundation of this relating, of romantic relationships? Simultaneously, communication. Communication is going to be, especially when it's done with the purest intent, this is going to be your connector, right? We communicate so that we can connect. We communicate so that we can understand, right? We listen so that we can take in information, because again, in this realm, we have agreed to block the one-mindedness that would be expressed as telepathy. We're embarrassed about it. We're afraid of it. We sure as heck don't want anyone to know our deepest, darkest thoughts, right? And so what do we need to do then? We need to communicate. We need to be authentic in how we deliver our lines, in delivering our lines. Sometimes there are things that we want to say, messages we want to deliver that we're afraid. We're afraid to say. We're afraid to speak out, and we're afraid to say, I'm not good with this anymore. This isn't comfortable for me anymore. I love you, and I'm going to take a pause from this physical interaction. The communication becomes easier to do again once you restore your foundation of the complete whole being that you are in your truest, realist, energetic essence. You stop second guessing what you've said. You stop thinking that you said the wrong thing. I shouldn't have said that, or I should have said this, or I would have said more. All of these blocks in your thoughts of thinking that you didn't do it right, they're based in fear. They are based in fear. And there is a thought system and a paradigm and a school of thought that believes that the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is fear. And then it also adds, but what is all encompassing can have no opposite. So it's corroborating this idea that love is the only reality. And as we attempt to define it, using words like unconditional, all inclusive, positive, infinite, eternal, you know, these are still just, these are still symbols of symbols. But in attempting to align our thoughts with that reality, we feel less guilty about putting our attention on another subject, focusing on another priority, on another role, understanding full well that you cannot put your attention in all the beautiful, loving directions and on all the loving subjects that you would like to all at the same time. This is the paradox, one of the divine paradoxes of being in this world, of believing that you are living in this world and that there's a world to be lived in. This, deep within you, that you could extend yourself in an infinite number of directions, dimensions, levels, densities. But then having this block of not being able to materialize that here. And it's true, you can't materialize that here. You cannot put your attention on 100 very deserving causes or people. You can't. You have to think about one at a time, complete that task, and then put your attention on another. And what ends up happening when we really put this massive amount of pressure on ourselves to show up instantaneously in a situation or for a person where we really feel that psychic pull, and yet here we are in another situation where we've got to put our attention here. I mean, Madi used the word dysregulating. It makes you feel completely out of sorts. And so what do you do in that moment where you feel like you shouldn't be in a situation anymore? Or you feel like there are so many situations that you'd want to give 100% of yourself to. There has to be a pause of forgiveness. There has to be some grace. You've got to extend grace for yourself. You've got to speak kindly to yourself. The idea of loving thy neighbor as you love thyself has as its basis and foundation and referent, do you love yourself? Are you accommodating and accepting of all the little quirks, all the little interesting ways of proceeding? Can you stop judging yourself as inadequate and not enough? From that, you then project and look outwards and extend that way of perceiving to your neighbor, to your lover, to your children, to your friends, without guilt if you have to, if you're called to another point of focus, to another situation. Communication, is the line of communication between your inner being, the you who you really are, that energetic state of being, is that line of communication between that and this perceiver of 5 different vibratory patterns, is that line of communication clear? Because if it is, your guidance will be very clear. Your decisions will pass the test of perfect peace. The words that come through you will not have any doubt. You will have that kind, calm confidence that, you know what, whatever was said, that's what was supposed to be said. If a person decided to take offense, if they decided to believe that what you were saying was an attempt to attack them, it offers them an opportunity to let go and to forgive and to keep going and to clarify, right? To not make assumptions, to be able to say, right, listen, I'm doing the best I can. And if somehow you're under the impression I'm not showing up enough, that sounds like a you problem. It's not trying to be arrogant, but if you are showing up with the purest intentions in the maximal way you can, then you're not going to be jaded or thrown off kilter by someone's opinion and impression of your performance. You've done your best, period. Moving on. So the communication first is between you and the you who you really are, between you and your source, between you and the greatest love of all, which is inside of you. Thank you, Whitney Houston. And then there's no worry about being able to express yourself vocally or even mentally, psychically, because you're not using your power to attack, which I'm going to scoot down to the 5th subject of our 4 itinerary of the power of our thoughts and words. Our thoughts have polarity in this world. In reality, there is only one thought. It is the original thought. Any rippling of a thought beyond that is a distortion of that thought, and that original thought is thought. So our thoughts in this world have polarity. How can we tell the polarity of our thoughts? Well, we have that emotional guidance system. We have the indicator of our emotions, of our feelings. As I'm thinking about someone or about an event or about a specific subject, if my emotions are beginning to be negatively tainted, you know what negative feeling emotions are, what they feel like. You don't feel good. Okay? You don't feel warm and peaceful and calm when you're experiencing a negative emotion. So if the thought is a negatively polarized thought, it will reflect and trigger a negatively polarized emotion. Which types of thoughts? We already said they're negative thoughts, but what makes it a negative thought? This brings in the idea that in reality, in love, positivity is all there is. There is no positive and negative aspect to love. Inclusivity, positivity, that's it. Any incremental gradient like restriction, dialing down, blocking of, dimming of the light, that's going to give you degrees of absence of that love, of absence of that positivity. And that shows up. We have assigned the word and the construct of negativity, but there's no such thing as negative energy. Energy is energy. That's it. And believe it or not, it is only positive energy. And don't take me down the path of an electron and how it has a negative charge. Let's not go there, but let's understand that positivity is all that is and all that exists. And as soon as we use our free will choice to mildly block our awareness of that and to look to the outside and find faults, find something to, pick at, we are willingly blocking our awareness of that love, of love's presence. So, coming to a relationship, a romantic relationship, with the intention to extend, to accept the role of the person in the way that they are playing it, in the way that they're showing up, to accept that they're not their role. Okay, they are this energetic being just like you, having made a fully intentional choice to be here in this world. And this is, people will debate that. They're like, well, I didn't choose to be born. I beg to differ. I believe you did choose to be born. I think you even chose your parents. I certainly believe that your free will cannot be violated. And whomever has crossed your path, um, they have done so for a reason. And on a certain level, certainly not physical, non-physical level, you have orchestrated it. And I encourage you to not give your power away. This is very important. This entire event and our work, my work, Mari's work, really is to empower. And to empower means for you guys to take to accept that the power has always been within you. And so these romantic relationships, when you are, and it doesn't matter if you're in a situationship or if you are in a full blown, equally, from both parties agreed upon interaction where you have a common goal, whether that's to, I don't know, apply for a mortgage together, entangle your finances, live under the same roof, create via projection, also known as procreation, and raise your children, whatever your goal is, whatever your unified goal is, when you come together, cross paths with someone physically and say, we're going to do something. And it doesn't matter how little it is, it doesn't matter how short, and it doesn't matter how long. It doesn't matter if you say things like, till death do us part, like we're in it for the long haul, whatever. But when you come to a relationship like that, if you are taking stock, if you are doing inventory of how that person has shown up for you, and then making assessments of how inadequate or insufficient their performance has been, I can tell you for sure, you're blocking the love. That is not a loving relationship. Love does not seek to control, criticize, or condemn. It doesn't keep score. Love does not keep score. That doesn't mean you come to relationships and go bankrupt emotionally or financially. It doesn't mean you come to relationships and think that you must say yes, even though you mean no, even though that you must do all the things that this person is asking you in order to make the relationship work. And it doesn't mean that you have to, no matter what, make the relationship work. It means if there is an attraction, on whatever level to a person, it means that you are going to show up um, in full acknowledgement of the fourth agreement. Always do your best. And what are you going to be doing your best at? You're going to do your best at being nice to each other. You're going to do your best at not attacking. You're going to do your best at saying no when you mean no. If you're tired and you don't want to do something, you don't have to apologize. You can just say, I need time to myself. I need time to center. I need time to recharge. When you are secure, and really stably centered in that energetic, infinitely valuable, eternally valid idea of beingness, you don't feel any sort of way to be able to say what you think, but you do not misuse your thoughts to attack and to point out what seem to you to be inadequacies and insufficiencies in how the other person is showing up. And there can come a moment where we say, you know what? Our physical paths need to diverge. Are we recording? We're recording. There may come a point where you say our physical paths need to diverge. There's no, but I will always love you. It's implied. Our physical paths need to diverge. This is what, is being called for. And being love and knowing it, of course, that entire premise is never going to be disrupted. The dog has not been fed. It must be allowed to pee all over the place in the dog run. Thank you. And then please feed it copious amounts and lock it in its little cage. Thanks, buddy. Marty, you should leave that in there for me, please. Just so we can see what a good multitasker I am. So these romantic relationships are beautiful opportunities and stages, performing areas of performance where we have the opportunity to extend and express this very intangible, certainly uncontainable idea, real love. And this is what helps us. This idea is what helps us detach with love. When we really have observed that it has become difficult to stay in resonance with someone, for our ways of proceeding, for our opinions, our thoughts, whatever, to be consonant, right? To be coherent with another's. When you say, can you see in your mind's eye, a picture of this person's face? From what I have heard, they can't. And so I do have to kind of go, like I said, go down the rabbit hole and go, well, if I say, can you imagine a lemon? Can you not see a lemon in your mind's eye? Very interesting. But it's a very small percentage of people. So most of us can, close our eyes and see someone's face, in our mind's eye. As you tune in, as you see that person's face and you tap in and tune in to their image, you're actually beginning to resonate. There's something called limbic resonance. It's an emotional connection that transcends body, time, space. You are actually tapping in to that person's biofield and their polarity. So in the moment, if you are seeing them, imagining them in your mind's eye, and you begin to feel uneasy or like something is wrong, like you've got to call them, like something doesn't feel right, or you start having some kind of imaginary argument with them, in that moment you have the power. The power of decision is yours to do a pause. If the association is a negative one, you have the choice to do a pause and to release any negativity that you are, any inadequacy, any belief in defect in the way this person has proceeded. Right there in your mind, you have the ability to do that. And you can release them to the ether, you can release them to spirit, you can, and keeping in mind that simultaneously, because there is no separation between the two of you, you are releasing yourself as well. And so I have a 3-part little thing that I reach for when I am thinking about someone and I start, somehow lecturing them about whatever. I know that in that moment, either they're not feeling well and I'm tapping in, or maybe they're thinking about me, bringing up all of their complaints and all of their problems. And they're like, the next time I talk to Juliana, I'm going to say this, that, and the other. But in that moment, it is not useful for me to join them in that negative polarity. And if they keep tapping in to my mind and my field, and I'm trying to focus on something else, it's going to be disruptive. So my three-part little mantra is, I bless you, I release you to the Holy Spirit. May you align your will with God's. I don't have a problem using the words Holy Spirit. I don't have a problem using the word God. I am perfectly willing to replace the word God with energy, with all that is. I won't replace it with the word universe because it's already, I know too much that the universe is just one of an infinite number of universes. So however you want to change that up, if you're welcome to use that as a tool. It actually comes from the ancient Essenes. The Essenes were the authors of the Dead Sea Scrolls, and there was a wonderful hour-long program on Gaia. If you go to Gaia.com, Greg Braden did this wonderful presentation called Awakening to Zero Point, Journey to Compassion. And he discussed in a course that he held this method of releasing anything that you're holding in your mind that you've either witnessed, that you've been part of, that has been to you, anything that has a negative emotional charge. And it is based on this very formulaic way of proceeding that he discovered in the Essene teachings, and it's called the blessing. And so I bless you, I release you to the Holy Spirit. May you align your will with God's. And if you need to say that 2 or 3 times until you feel better, you can do that. And you can trust that in the moment you are being released, and simultaneously the individual, the event, the person that you're thinking about, who is unsettled, they are also benefiting from that prayer. How does this affect community? Well, think about it. If each individual put their best foot forward with the intention of remembering and acknowledging their divinity, remembering, acknowledging, accepting their magnificence, their grandeur, their completeness. And if everyone showed up extending this, of course we'd all receive it. There'd be that beautiful a materialization of to give is to receive. I give but to myself. This is something I say often. It is a lesson from A Course in Miracles, because there is no separation. Anytime you give understanding, acceptance, patience, forgiveness to anyone, you are giving it to yourself. So this synopsis of our day 4, keeping in mind day 4 was the hummingbird, and the hummingbird's element was air. Love is in the air. Love is everywhere. As we accept our oneness with all that is, that can also be referred to as accepting the atonement at one met. As we accept that, as we release our fear, whatever it may be, fear of insignificance, fear of not being enough, fear of loss, right? Fear of death, fear of whatever. As we release this fear, atonement, accepting the atonement and releasing fear are really one and the same. There's a healing that occurs. There's a salvation from a way of thinking that was maladaptive. When you think in a way that is divisive, when you think in duality, there should be fear. You should be afraid, because at any given point, what's to say that someone else's interpretation of how you went about was wrong? And now what's going to happen? Well, there are consequences. And so if you're thinking in that way, yes, there's reasons for you to be afraid, whether it's being at work, whether it's being in a relationship, whether it's afraid of being left, whether it's afraid that someone is pretending to like you, but really they don't. If someone's pretending to like you, but really they don't, and they carry on with you in a relationship for months or years, you would know, eventually you would know when it is time for you to say, I love you, and it is time for our paths to diverge. And you'd have no fear. So, we are definitely going to be doing another Zoom event, not necessarily 5 days, but that really revolves around the subject love. So, please feel free to gather your questions, send them to us. Mari's going to close out our um, our replay of day 4 with some details of how you can send your questions in. Um, and we would love to discuss this more because it's such an expansive topic. It's so big that, even 2 hours was really not enough of course it wasn't enough. Of course, time cannot circumvent eternity. Thank God. Thank you so much for your guys' patience in all of our technological um, expansive expanding events and teachable moments. Thanks, guys. Mari, we did great. You did great. Hopefully you have me on your headphones. I wouldn't worry at all about Swami. You can text me more later if you want. I'm so glad you let me close this out. Um, I had to forgive myself again and again for not recording the original, but I think this is good. I think this is enough. I think it's just what we need.